But it can provide, as Claudia mentioned, the blueprint, the roadmap, a playbook. Whatever your favorite hobby or pastime is, I'm sure there's something that's analogous to that. This is how you evaluate and assess the process. It's taking it and looking at it piece by piece in an objective way. One thing I personally like about planning is it really provides a stable environment. It provides expectations. If you come to the Bear Lake Valley in 20 years, this is what you can expect. These are the rules you can expect to play by. You think about economic policy in the United States. Well, why do we need it? Well, so you don't invest a lot of money in research and development just to have a product that someone else can come and copy and make money off it. You have patent laws and things to provide this stable environment so people know what to expect. It provides that solid footing for everyone involved to understand what the values of the community are. And I think that's the same with any laws that we have, whether it's traffic laws or planning. It's really just to provide those expectations. What do we value in our community? It can be a means to guide desirable development. Where do we want this to happen? How do we want it to happen? However, it can't be used to prevent development. Nowhere in statute are you allowed to put up a fence and just say, no more. And it should be used to promote the public interest, not a special interest. I think all interests are special, but really you need to take an overall look at what is the public good. And so as I said, it really can be simplified to just taking a hard look and deciding what you want for your area and the area around you. So now onto the planning process. A very simple process. This will show you how to do it right here. Now this is the planning process that I learned in grad school, and there are probably a lot of things on there I still am trying to understand what they mean. If you just do a quick Google search, you can find all sorts of planning processes. And honestly, I think the financial planning processes can be as good as ones you find on land use planning. It's the same steps. It's the same cyclical program. And they all are going to get you kind of on the same step. So I'm going to, whoops, that wasn't the right one. I don't know why am I going backward? Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go through my planning process according to Evan Curtis, but it follows much the same step as any of those other planning processes that you find. First, assess the current situation. I apologize, I hope everyone in the back can read it. How do you know where you're going if you don't know where you're at? Again, it looks like you've started this process already. Just taking a hard look, what are we? As you do that, that's when you can start to define the issues. Certain issues will start to pop out at you, and then you can decide, oh, we're going to need these stakeholder groups. We're going to need these people involved in order to make this happen, and also look at the scale. How big of a scale do we need to look at in order to tackle these issues? Once you know where you're at, you can kind of start to look forward and say, well, where do we want to be? Come up with goals. You can even make a vision statement, similar to what businesses do. What is the vision for our region? And you may want to also put some performance measures. It's great to have a great goal like, we want a good region. We want a healthy region. We want a nice region. But if you don't articulate, well, how are we going to, what is a nice region? What is a healthy region, a good region? Not as helpful. Then you can identify alternative courses of action. I like to say that step 2 minus step 1, where you want to be minus where you are, there's the gap. That's what you need to do. We need to somehow fill this gap to get there. What are the alternatives that we can implement to get there? This is really the step where you can be creative a little bit. Sit down with a map, move little houses around and figure out where would they fit well, what do we like about our region, and be a little bit creative. This is where you don't need to worry necessarily as much about the cost. Go ahead and build your castle, have a big garage. Again, perfect example, Claudia. And then after you've done that, you evaluate the alternatives and consider the solutions. And this is where you really have to sit down and say, okay, what are the population projections? At the city and county level, if you want it to have a binding authority, it needs to have an ordinance. Otherwise, there's no teeth. Now that's not to say that having a regional plan without this isn't helpful. You can still have guiding principles, a regional vision statement that can be voluntary for those who wish to follow it. But if you do want it to have any statutory authority, then it does need to be in the ordinances. And then lastly, you need to have a mechanism for change, to go back and review. Even the US Constitution has a mechanism for change. So this isn't something that's written in stone that that you're tying yourself into forever. There needs to be a way to review this and make sure that you're actually meeting your goals, and if necessary, can update it, alter the course slightly to make sure that you're reaching the goals that you had originally set. And then, of course, very important, throughout the process, there's got to be community and elected and a public official buy-in and leadership. Without the leadership and pushing this forward, having those who live in the region, those public stakeholders involved, the whole process can be for naught. They've got to be involved throughout the whole process. So again, just to simplify it one more time, it's just putting your goals and vision together, taking that hard look, planning the process, and then implementing it. So it doesn't need to be as scary as it can be. So just to talk first about the current situation, I just wanted to show a few interesting statistics about the region. First off, population and population projections. I think it's interesting. Back in 1940, the population was estimated at 2,000, and I think you're about 2,300 right about now in Rich County. So it's kind of been an up and down process, but the projections show that that's expected to continue rising in the future. So if you just look at the past 10 years, you can see it's been on the steady rise since 1995. And then this one's interesting. New dwelling units. Now this is just dwelling units permitted, so it's not necessarily that they were built in this year, but permits issued. You can see it's just kind of been a roller coaster all over the place on how many dwelling unit permits were issued in Rich County. If we overlay the city estimates as well, I just wanted to show this. The green one, if you can tell, if you can see the colors back there, is Garden City, and then the blue is other Rich County. So you can see most of the development really is right here in this area in Bear Lake. If you overlay the two, the population for the past 10 years and the dwelling units, again, I find this one very fascinating. They don't match at all. You can see that the population has increased at a fairly steady pace, but the building permits, again, they're all over the place. So if we just look at actual estimated population increase and graph that next to the new dwelling units permitted in red, you can see there were actually many years where there were more housing units permitted than there were actual people. So if you take a household, there were probably an average of 10 households per year, but you're averaging 43 housing units permitted.
How do you take into consideration I don't know what the short-term population is, because there's a lot of people that live here on weekends, but they're not permanent residents of the county. How do you take that into consideration?
Yeah. And that's a good point. This really is an investment. So again, talking about these weekend residents and others, just looking from the tax commissions outside of Rich County for their primary residence, that is bar none the highest in the state. So again, as we're looking at this current situation, our issues starting to emerge. Speaking of weekday residents, I'm glad you brought that up. It was a great segue. Appreciate it. This is traffic counts from UDOT in Garden City just for 2008. It's the same basically every year, but just to show you the pattern, you can see this top one, of course, is weekend, and this one is weekday traffic, and then I've got the averages for the year, weekend and weekday. But you can see during the winter months, you're looking at around 1,400 vehicle trips going across their traffic counters. But during July, during a weekend in July, that tops 7,000 vehicles.